All right, welcome to the August 29, 2025 edition of Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 209, which I've entitled The Workday Before Labor Day, and yet it might only be a few of us that are working on the workday before Labor Day. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantinap. This is an event that we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time, to talk about what's going on with Plantinap and most importantly, your experiences with the product, the things that you're facing, the way that you're working. We invite everyone to participate. This is open beginners through experts, and we hope that you'll participate. We record all of them and put them on YouTube, so you can get to those on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantanap. We do this agenda where we stop and say hello because we are a friendly group, and then we always start with first call and anything that got submitted in advance, and we'll look at some of the other things like community things on our Campfire website community, and then I have at least one ghost story today, and then after we run out of things to talk about in a public way, we will go into our Afterglow segment. That's where we stop and stop the recording, hang around for a few more minutes, and just enjoy each other's company a little bit more. So we hope that you will engage with us, show and tell. You can submit questions and topics in advance. You can either do that by scanning that QR code, or if you like, you can send an email to support@plantinap.com, suggest it as a topic. We'll do a little preparation and then get it on the agenda. With that, hello to a very small group this morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Thanks for keeping me from being here by myself. I start wondering what exactly I will do. I'll give an update, kind of like a little book report, and then push stop, but you saved me from that. So, did anyone come with a first call, something you want to talk about? We do have some things that were submitted, and I do want to give you some updates about what's going on behind the scenes here at Plantinap, but always want to talk about what you want to talk about first.
I always remember my first call items about halfway through.
Okay. Well, that's fine with that. Yours is actually on the list, Mark, so let's just jump to that. You were asking, and this was more than a week ago, you couldn't, you submitted this, but the basic idea was, what are other people doing to store information about users? Because there's really a couple of things that pop up at a from a simple level. There is the built-in DNN platform profile, so you could add a profile, but then there's also let's add a table that's specifically about storing my preferences, the user's preferences, things like that, and perhaps there's other techniques as well. So first, before we dive into that, is there anything more you want to say about it? And is there anything, how have you solved it so far? And then maybe we can share notes.
I'm still here, just to make sure that you know
Mark,
that we
yeah, I didn't lose internet yet.
Yeah.
I sprung this on Mark. He may have had to jump to something else. So
No, the issue was my microphone was muted and I didn't know it.
and here we're talking like you're not even here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I have tried putting information in the user profiles table, and I have also put it into an additional table. Like I do have a table for photographers, and I can put whatever I need to that are related to photographers in that table. But then I needed another one for judges, and it seemed like there was duplicated information, duplicated columns, but some were different. And then I thought, well, maybe I just need one table to store them both, maybe with just a flag that says what kind of user they are, photographer or judge, and so on. And it just seems like there's several different approaches. And I was asking what other people are doing.
Patrick, you have any?
Well, yeah, I mean, USPA uses extensive storing of data in other places. And just, from a long range perspective, I have in the past, I've created lots of profile properties, but I think that, we can all agree that the profile uh, properties are sometimes complex to work with. So it creates a level of complexity that seems to be easier to deal with when you just create your own tables. And so we do that. And I can't remember. Um, I'd have to dig in to see, because I know that we do have role-based data, because we have lots of roles that deal with different levels of people and their credentials. In fact, we have judges, just to relate to what you were just saying. Um, so we do store data like that, and it is so. I guess at a basic level, I can say we store data like that, and it is in another. We do keep it in other tables, in multiple tables, not just one. But we do have one table that stores a significant amount of data. A significant amount of data that's called the contact table. But that does have ties to other tables. And usually the way we deal with it is if we create another table, we tie it to the contact ID. And then the contact ID is tied to the user ID. So when you go looking at permissions, when somebody signs in about what they see, it does, you do have to do some joins, but it seems to be a good way to, it works for us to organize the data like that. Does
So
that?
did you just say you have a table called contacts and that
Mhm.
is that's your place for extra information?
Yes, quite a bit of extra information. Yes, and that is tied to a user ID. And then
Right. So
we have other tables that are tied to the contact ID that store other data. And as much as possible, we do try to avoid the duplication that you were just talking about, by tying all those tables back to the contact.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
expert on all that just arrived.
Hi. I was having
Hi.
problems with my fancy new headset.
Welcome.
Um, yeah, what also the advantage of that is that you can have a lot of contacts that don't have users because not all of our contacts, not all of our members actually log in. So we keep them, I don't actually create a user for every contact. It's just when on login, they create a user. And so that keeps it a little cleaner too.
I have a lot of that going on as well. That's a good something to say out loud.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
like 300,000 contacts and only maybe 60,000 users, maybe.
Only.
So your contacts table then would be similar to a user table in respect that you're keeping their basic information, their name and email and
Yeah,
things like that, right?
right. And credentials and
And that information that's tied together, first name, last name, email address, that stuff there is stuff in the contact table that is common to the users table, and we just make sure we update both whenever they're updated. But that's only for that level. There's not a lot of that going on.
Yeah, the users table is pretty straightforward. There isn't really much to keep in there, so that makes sense and especially in your scenario where not everybody has a user, that duplicating a couple of those columns makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see that as some duplication with the user table. User and contacts are relatively the same and you're duplicating, but But you have to
I
have that users table, don't you? Because it controls the logins and all the
yeah,
DNS stuff.
and the role, yeah, like yeah, roles are tied to that. Yeah, so I mean
Hmm.
that's necessary, definitely. Um, you know, I think that you could get away with not having that basic data duplicated just by, you know, when you load it, whenever you load it, you have that user ID tie between the two tables, and then just pull like the first name and last name and email address from the users table. But it's a very limited amount of duplicated information, and to me, I think it's easier just to make sure that if you have a first name, last name, email address update, that you just store it in both places and just make sure it's updated both places. I think that's just as easy because it's not a lot of duplicated information. What do you think? I mean, honest opinion. You can shoot me down on that. Go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, that's what I asked the question for. I want to hear what
Yeah.
people are doing, but you know, it breaks one of the rules of good database design, where you
Hmm.
only store something in one place, you know, and
Right.
then you
I get
refer
that.
to it. So it raises a little red flag, but it's only in my head, not in my experience has taught me this kind of thing, you know.
Hmm.
So
And and for us that we limit where that specific data gets changed, which is only in two places, one for staff and one for the member themselves, just for their own profile. And so there's only two places, so it's not like a lot of maintenance.
I think also the complexity comes from things like username and email. What do you decide about that?
If
What we
they
did was we require their email address is their username, and it's
Yes.
always
Well,
the same.
that's one option. And keeping them synchronized is something you need to
And
be sure about.
it also helps when people don't know, you know how those complicated logins are like, did you forget your username? Oh, recover my username. Oh, recover my password. Oh, recover my, no, your username is your email address. And the only other thing that is normal just for all things is like account recovery. If you don't have access to that email address anymore, well, that's a problem separately. But it really simplifies the whole, I don't have to remember a username either for the end user.
hmm yeah, that's true. I use the username for the email address for username quite frequently.
Yeah, I think that's normal to do. It's just keeping them the same under all conditions. That's could be challenging. I'm working now with the system where in some way or another it's possible to have them different, and then you get strange errors. So that's I don't know if that's a past issue, but
Early in my DNN career, I really was trying to take advantage of using profiles, and it just adds up so that you know the DNN profile is a place to store information, and it really, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but
hmm
it's like it's much easier to just create and manage a table on my own,
Yeah.
and also to, I mean, we haven't touched on it. I think there's probably some people who have extended the DNN users table, which just to me feels a little dangerous.
hmm
So adding a nice table that you can join to and have under your control and have very simple ability to edit is feels like a very simple scenario to me.
Yeah, I had the same experience with the profiles. You know, it works and you can figure it out
hmm
after applying some mental energy for a little while,
Yep.
but but it is more difficult to get things out.
oh
You
yeah,
know.
the first thing
That's a
I do is create a view.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was going to say that going way back to when I was, you know, still using the profile table significantly, that's, you know, what taught me all about pivots.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the information is stored in um, you've got user ID, property name, and
Yeah,
property value, right? So it's
right.
one row per property, and so it's not terribly efficient either. It's probably, I mean, if you want to look at efficiency, um, having a table with one or two duplicate columns is a lot more efficient than having.
It's flexible, therefore they build it.
Yeah. No, I understand it. I'm not throwing rocks against
Yeah,
it.
I know.
Just if you're trying to design a system and you have the ability to
To use Plantain app, then you can have just a user object.
Yep, an entity. Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, guys.
Good question. We're still in first call, so any late joiners with early questions would be a good time. And absent that, I'm going to go on to a couple of prepared topics and give you time to think about it. I had a support ticket this week that was very perplexing, a listing that wouldn't load. So actually it would load if you had 10 records, and it would load if you had the page size set to 20 records. But if you set the page size to 30 records, it would throw a JavaScript error. And some quite a unrelated JavaScript error. And after a couple hours of testing, I determined that the problem was the use of tokens at the row level, and each token was calling a different custom token, which called a workflow, which used other tokens and ran SQL. And so the burden of just what looks like a simple token and works on one row when you have, I mean, there's a point at which, and I suspect it's a timing issue. I really don't know. It could be an overflow as well. I really don't know what the underlying cause was, but or underlying, what threw the error. But every row that you're doing throws a token which does many things, and you couldn't, if you're running a workflow, it could do
Whatever.
whatever, and it could take forever. And I really suspect that it was a matter of convenience, right? Being able to the token if you've already have a token in one place that does all this work and returns this bit of information that you need. And it works well on a per user basis. And well, okay, I'm just going to consume the same thing in a listing, and then I want to list out 500 rows, and now all of a sudden it's throwing this huge burden out every row. So I understand how people could get there, but it does bring up that you can do things in low code that if you don't think about it, they're throwing a huge weight on your system and might not be possible to complete. I suspect in this particular case, it would have, I think they were just trying to do some CSS, trying to highlight certain rows that were, had some characteristic, and that you could have divined that through another way besides the multi-level token. Anyone with any experience in this area or related something that you do in low code that you can do it, but maybe it's not the most efficient way to do it.
I know you have to be careful, that's for sure. But, if you got a table with 100,000 records, then every column you add will result in more slowness, I would say.
With great power comes great responsibility.
You said it.
When you're trying to do low code, you might be involving people who aren't developers at heart and don't understand the impact of what they're asking for. So it's from a support perspective, it really was kind of tricky. I thought that, okay, of course, if it works for 20 rows, it should work for 30 rows. Why isn't this guy's listing working? And then you get down into the details and you can say, yeah, theoretically it should work, but in reality, there's we can't support every scenario, and I don't want to say that, but it's true.
That's a lot of complexity right there. That this outline that you have on the screen now. That's
Absolutely, and I
yeah.
think, and I go back to what Mark said a minute ago. Great power, great responsibility. Good line, by the way. So hopefully that'll get picked up somewhere. But the thing is, it is very cool, and I've done it. I have done something. I remember doing an example of this, being able to put a token on a row, and the case that I was demonstrating was that the token could do a database write that indicated that somebody was looking at the details of a listing. So if you wanted to audit who viewed what, just the fact that it was appearing in a listing, whether or not they did anything with that row, from a securities perspective, it was a nice audit. Somebody looked at this piece of information. It was a simple SQL insert, and I mean, it wasn't a production thing; it was a test thing. But the idea that you could push do that is a very cool thing. On the other hand, you could certainly set up something that would cause you problems. So. I've also sent, on the plus side too, we have a client that is retrieving data from an Oracle database, and they have related information in a SQL database. Or maybe you want to do an API call and bring some information together. It makes it possible to do these certain things on the fly, at runtime. You just got to be very careful how you do it, how it gets used. Okay, I have a couple of behind the scenes things that I wanted to talk about. This is just kind of an early warning. We're working on coming up with, if you look at the bottom of this display, so the topic is if you want to resolve tokens within your theme before, so you want to place some token to display something for outside of the module level. That we've had a couple of different syntaxes over the years, just because of the history, and we're simplifying. Our team is rewriting the token engine. We want to come up with one way. So I think the current thinking is that in version 128 that we'll be using this syntax that you see in the third panel. And so during upgrade, you'll have to make some changes to your themes. It won't affect everybody, but if you're using that characteristic, it's just a step that's going to have to happen, and it's going to have to happen during the upgrade. Any questions, thoughts, concerns on that?
So it'll be something that will there won't be any backwards compatibility at all or anything like that.
Correct. And we entertained, I asked the question, is there any way that we could, for example, do it early in 128? And actually, I don't remember, Peter, I think you were part of that conversation, whether it was possible to do it in advance. And I think they were still considering that.
Yes, we were considering that, because yeah, we were considering that. So you see the last one, that's plant and app tokens, :apply. If we have that in 27 already, then you can move your skin in 27 to this new structure, and then you update to 28. You're done. The other thing I also mentioned in that meeting, people don't have many tokens in their skin, mostly 1 or 2, I would say. And then if you're aware of this problem, because that's the major issue, I think, then you can simply change your skin and be done with it. So
Right, but that was that was where the next question I was going to is, what if you're, somebody who's been using the same skin for a while, and sometimes you just forget you do stuff and you don't even remember that you have a token in your skin.
And
yeah, and then you'll see that your skin is broken. And then you're going to ask yourself, did I read the breaking changes?
Exactly. I think this is going to be one of those where it's very evident that it's that you skipped a step if you haven't addressed it. So, and not only the comment that there's not many skins that have it, but typically there aren't a lot of skin files that, I mean, it would be possible to do a search to looking for these either skin object replacer or AVT my tokens core or whatever.
But I think it would be good if we have it in 127 already, because then you can have an enterprise workflow.
This is an early warning, and we'll certainly come back to it before we get to releasing 128. Hopefully that'll be, we will have introduce it early. Another thing that I think we probably all realize, in listings, we have about 15 things that are marked as legacy only, and they're not. They do apply to data tables and cards and calendars, and so we're removing the legacy only thing on all of them. That I think I have one more to research to make sure that it's that is in fact functional in all cases. But somebody got over enthusiastic about marking things legacy only when we came out with the data table views and Bootstrap 5, and it really was incorrect. All these things apply, or maybe they didn't apply at our first release, and later on we made them equivalent. So anyway, just a small cosmetic.
Thank you for that.
We also don't want to ever worry people. I mean, yeah, when we do things like this, or mark things as obsolete when they're not, and then it makes you worry about, well, is this going away? And we don't want to raise that issue either. So these are stable. I didn't do anything with documentation this week, so there's nothing new there. I didn't do anything with contributions, and I didn't see any that were put out as well. So that's a non-starter. I'm already up to ghost stories, and so you guys are going to have to think of a topic, or we're going to end early on this pre-holiday.
Well, guess what? I was waiting for ghost stories.
Okay, well, good. Well, I have mine on the agenda first, and it's related to what I was already talking about.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
This one here, when I went to look on a client system the other day, well, actually, so this listing wasn't the same one where the listing wouldn't go to 30 rows, and I was saying, well, does he have a good installation of the the listing module? And I was looking at the way the listing was set up, and all of these legacy only markings, the notes, were not showing. And I thought, okay, he's got a very old version, or some component of Action Grid didn't get updated, because it just says display mode, not display mode legacy only. And he was running the exact same version I was, and so this was my ghost story. Not that it caused any functionality problems. It really ended up not being. It was CSS. He didn't want to see the legacy only things, and these had a different class, and he wiped out the class that as a site setting. He just had removed it, and so it wasn't displaying, and it sent me off into how is this not updated correctly? And so it's always interesting if somebody else has control of the CSS and makes a decision that can impact the way things look and confuse other people. Or yeah. So anyway, that was my little ghost story. And so yours, Patrick.
So the first one is it's two. The first one is default buttons. And I don't know if it's always been like this or not, but we were trying to troubleshoot a problem that we were seeing, and we discovered that what was happening was that there was there were binds on some buttons on a form, and if the button that is the topmost default button is not shown because of a bind, and somebody presses enter, it gets clicked, and it was a big mystery.
How are
And
people clicking this button that's not shown?
right, exactly. Yep, yep. Or because it was like, how on earth are we getting this message when that button isn't there? And so I finally figured out that that's what was causing it. It was that it was a button that was above the button they should have been clicking, and it was marked as a default button. And
And so you had a show condition that ended up being false. Is that true?
right, yep. A show
Right.
condition ended up being false,
And
and
a default
yes,
button.
default button, yep.
Yep.
And what we discovered is they were clicking enter. They were, hitting enter on their keyboard instead of actually clicking the button that was being shown to them. And
Which
so
most people don't do, but there's a
Mhm.
few of us that love the keyboard a little more than others.
Yep.
So you tab over and hit the space bar or the enter key. Or,
So actually, that I consider this a bug.
I was wondering about that. I think so too. And the reason I actually do feel like it's a bug is that the problem is that if the button then, so in this situation it has to do with our two-factor authentication system, and so they have a login button which is perfect as a default button, right? You put in your credentials and you hit enter and you log in. But then if you have if that person how is this happening? So, oh, right, yes. So that person was not using the two-factor authentication. They were just hitting enter, but the verify button for entering your code for two-factor authentication was above the login button on the form, but it was hidden. And so it was being clicked and they were getting a message saying that they had entered an invalid code.
Right.
But I would also like I would like the verify button to be the default button when they are presented with the code to enter, and without putting in some JavaScript, you can't do that. You can't have two default buttons even if one's hidden. It just doesn't work. And so my way I solved it was by putting in JavaScript that once the login button has been clicked, it removes the default attribute from the login button, so that the verify button then becomes the default button. But ideally, I shouldn't have to do the JavaScript to remove that attribute. It should be that if the button is not there, it's not default.
Yeah, so what you're saying actually, if it's the binding says it's false, it's not showing, then the default for that button should also be removed.
Yes.
So looking at these, I was thinking that you might have been able to solve that through the enable by having the same condition on enable.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I feel like I tried that. I need to go back and test it. I feel like I tried something along those lines, and I think that the
It probably didn't solve the default issue. I would think it would
it
prevent it from.
that's exactly what happened. It didn't allow submission, right? So I wasn't able to submit anymore, but the enter didn't work. Nothing happened when I clicked when I hit the enter key, because it didn't pass by the disabled button and see the next button as the default button.
But I would agree from a bug standpoint, if you're not showing a button, I would think we wouldn't allow it to be clicked. Is there, it can, so thinking about that, I mean, because it would be potentially a breaking change. Is there any reason people would be having a button that's not visible but can be clicked? Okay, so now I can already think of one, which is we kind of do this all the time with
JavaScript.
with JavaScript,
Yeah,
because
right.
we want to do it on change of some
But
other field.
but does that need to be a default button though?
Right. No, I'm sure it does not.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but if we were to just say if it's show false, that we we disable it, that would break other things, I think.
No, I'm saying that if it's show false, that it's no longer can be a default button. It would still be it could still be clicked by JavaScript, but it couldn't be activated by an enter on a keyboard enter.
Right. Right. That sounds like a reasonable fix.
If you have multiple default buttons, does only one of them execute? As far as multiple buttons checked?
That was my experience, yeah. Yep, only the topmost default one, whether hidden or not, is the default button.
Topmost meaning left, right, top to bottom?
In your ordering on the layout tab, yeah. Yeah.
Probably in just in your page, in your document.
Because when I went to the default when I first got the idea that or we got the idea actually, because we were troubleshooting it together, Jen and I. When we first got the idea that this is probably what it is, I moved the verify button below the login button, and that's all I had to do for it to suddenly work correctly. On the layout tab, I moved the verify button below the login button.
So I'm just chewing on this a little bit, that we on the idea that if a button is not shown, it can't be default. That would have to be somewhat dynamic, right? The show is a condition that gets evaluated out, and it decides that, okay, I mean, I would think in most cases it's a token. You're evaluating and it comes out true or false. So it's not like we can institute a rule that says at design time we turn off default. It would be at runtime. If it's not shown,
it's just dynamic. So it's inside the Angular. So it's the because you can also have a field inside your form, and a drop down for yes, it takes you somewhere else, or it hides the button. So as soon as the button becomes hidden, the default attribute on that button should also be removed. Because they're already missing in JavaScript or in Angular with the properties of that button.
All right. Well, I can certainly promise to raise this with our product team. And
that's the JavaScript I use to fix the issues. So when the I forget what event I forget when that JavaScript gets called, but I guess maybe it's after the click of the login button, somewhere in there, it gets the login button gets the default button attribute turned off.
And just for purposes of my notes, that's the set attribute data dash default dash button set to off. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Good mystery. You said you had two.
Yes. What was the other one? I think we've talked about this before on the call, but this is a good example of how you can work with DNN and PlanSnap for years and get stuck again on something. When you put a value into a session, into a session value, and then you call that value at form initialization to put it into a form field. If the form field that you're putting it into, the token you're putting it into, and therefore the form field as well, if you're using the same form field name, if it's all the same key, so you're using your token and your form field have the same name as the key of your session value, the value gets set. The value doesn't apply correctly into the field. It gets set for, I need to inspect a page to remember the names, but there's two value attributes in a and this was a hidden field, right? Yes, this was a hidden field, so maybe it's different by different kinds of fields, but this was a hidden field, and there's two value attributes on a hidden field. One's called value, and one is called data value, I believe. I really do need to inspect a page to remember. But it only gets set in the value attribute. It doesn't get set in the data value attribute, and then it can't be used for conditions or being read or anything like that. That value just doesn't show up. It was making me crazy because I was inspecting the page and saying, well, the value is there. I have the value in my hidden field, and it should be doing what I wanted to do, and it wasn't. It took me a while to finally decide, oh, maybe I should rename the token and the form field to something else and see if it works. And as soon as I did that, it worked just fine.
So the name of was it the session key and the field name was what overlapped?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you call it, but if they're the same key, then you're going to get into trouble.
Yeah, and it may, I think it probably has more to do with the token you use in events. I changed both the token and the because I was using the token I was establishing in my initialization events was the same name as my field, so the value would just go right into it. I was taking advantage of that feature, so you don't have to initialize with the you don't have to put the token into the initialization of the into the initial value of the field if they're named the same, and so I was taking advantage of that, and so it may be, I didn't even test that if I just changed the name of the token that I was setting in initialization, but maybe that would have done the trick also. But all three, in my case, all three were named the same. It was the session key, the token I was putting it into at form initialization, and the field ID. Has anybody else seen this? I feel like we talked about something like this before, but because when I discovered it, I was like, I may have seen this before, or we talked about it, or.
I can't recall. I recall that I was struggling with session keys and stuff like that and values. Not sure it's related to this one.
So I'm sorry, were you using it in an initialization event or
Yes, right. So in events on pre-init.
Okay, so let's we'll have to have a field that's the target, and can I make it is it the same issue if it's a text box or does it have to be a hidden field?
I'm not sure. We can try
Let's
it.
start with the text box.
Yeah, okay.
It's going to give it the same name, and so now we need to initialize it here. Does that look like good syntax?
Mm-hmm.
So we need and then one more button here. And all right, so I'm just happen to be passing it through.
Right, you did a GetOrSession, right?
So with a parameter, I'm going to use this set test, and then visibly, so now the action operated, and then we have.
Okay, so test does have a value there. Okay.
All right, so let's flip it to a hidden field. There.
Did you set the session variable again? Oh wait, no,
I
I
didn't.
see.
It's
Yeah,
a session variable, and it exists.
right. So when you reloaded, it should have updated the value. So
And it,
can you inspect the page and
sure, be happy to. But session variable is now set, so it's there every time. All right. So we need to inspect and try to find that hidden field, right?
yeah.
Let's drag that over here.
Because I actually did exactly this. I was getting so frustrated by it. I used the
Tested
JSON.
horrible.
Yeah, I exported the all the tokens in the using the context the JSON context of JSON action, and it didn't have a value, and yet I could look at the field and see that it was getting a value. So I suspect we're not going to see the same thing I was seeing, and why I don't know.
All right, so I chose a horrible variable name test, which
No, yeah.
let's rework this to have a better name that will not appear. And so we create that'll work. So it's on the URL still, which is fine. It's part of the button.
Actually, having it on the URL, could that be impacting you because it's resetting it on your way in?
Well, it's only actually setting it. Well, let's get rid of it. It's only setting it when I click the set test session variable, but all right. So now we have a DNN field that has the value of
And
one.
then the data val is there also. And that's not what I was seeing. What I was seeing is that the value was there and it had exactly what I expected in the value field, but the data val didn't. So there's a lot of other variables here. Obviously, I was using set session and I was using it on another page and reading it, on page load on a different page. So there's all the value I was putting in there was a long random string. It was something, it was the result of some encryption I was doing on on server side. So there's lots of other variables there that could have been causing what I'm seeing, maybe.
Is there any chance that it was either named value or data val?
No.
Yeah,
It
so
would, no, it definitely was. Yeah, it was.
we've
Definitely.
seen other things, for example,
Yeah.
where you're trying to pass something, as okay. Well, gee, I wish we'd captured it in a bottle so that I could have looked for it and written it up. But I'll play around with here a little bit more and see if I can find it. If I can't, then if you happen to, have a repeatable, and Matt has his hand up. I don't know whether you've had it up for 20 minutes or you have a comment now. And you're also on mute if you're.
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling to find the mute button. So no, it hasn't been 20 minutes, just a couple of minutes. I've actually seen, I came in late, so I caught the tail end of this, but based on what I'm hearing Patrick say, I've seen something, some behaviors that I think might be similar. But the question I have is when you use that GetOrSession, if there's nothing in the session variable, it creates the session variable with the query string value. That's a true statement, correct?
Yes, yes.
So then suppose you have a new query string and the same, so you've got a session variable with a pre-existing value in there, and then you have a new query string value coming in. Does that then get replaced with the new query string?
If it's non-blank. So mine is tied to this get test session variable button. If I were to click it when we have nothing on the query string, I'm going to say it's not going to override it. And let's verify that by also outputting it in our show everything button. So that. So if it's on the query string, excuse me, if there's nothing on the query string, then nothing happens to the value. But if I send it like this with an empty value, if it's on the query string, then that's going to reset it. When the getter, well, again, only when I'm clicking my button, because that's where I put the GetOrSession. So, that.
Okay.
If you pass it, it resets it. If you don't pass it, it will not reset.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And hopefully that, I think there's some wording about that in the way in the little bit of inline documentation that we have on how that GetOrSession works, but let's see if it provides that clue. If the key exists, then it saves it into the session. And Yeah. So if the key doesn't exist on the get, then it doesn't do it. Okay. All right, we didn't capture that one, but if we do, or anyone does, we can pick it up again next time. We've pretty well. Oh, we got minutes left. And a couple of late joiners. Anybody with a first call or anything else? All right.
I have an oddity question.
Yes, sir.
I was doing some work in the SQL console on a machine other than my regular machine, and it would not pop up the window when I would go to save a query. And I tried it on 2 different browsers on another machine. Is there something in a setting somewhere that could block something like that?
Well, so some browsers do block pop-ups. Seems like that might be could be like a Firefox thing, but I remember seeing in a browser there's like this flag that shows up in this area that lets you know that it blocked a pop-up. So potentially there.
Okay. I'll look for that the next time I have to use another machine, but it works at my normal machine, so it's like, okay, I haven't experienced that before.
I might use the inspect and look at console and see that you might see clues in either the network tab or the probably the console that says that a pop-up was blocked or something like that. So just a guess. I haven't seen that particularly. I was working with SQL console earlier in the week and thought of a feature enhancement. We have, this ability here, and if you look in logs, everything gets logged, and I wondered how practical it would be to be able to just recall my recent queries out of the event log. Probably be pretty easy to do, and you could, because I know I do things and then I do something else and then I want to go back, and so if you had the ability to just click and say recent queries and have it show them to you. Anyway, if nothing else, it's good to know that when if you're doing something in SQL console, that the queries are being logged and you have the ability to go back and find them and drag them out of there or audit them, right? That's kind of part of the purpose. Who did what when? You can at least find it.
I think that's a good idea, Dale.
Yeah, I like it too.
Well, anything that makes and so now I can brag on Patrick a second, because all this work that was done over here, the stuff I use it like every day to do a create select or a create insert or any of this work that being able to not build my own queries. Of course, the other thing that I use is this get column schema, which you have to paste somewhere, puts it on your clipboard, but shows you the full setup of your data table. And
I find that very handy for AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and one more 30-second ghost story that I haven't gotten to the end of. You mentioned of AI. I was trying to do something in preparation. Let's see, what was I did? Oh no, it doesn't matter. I thought, I mean, I love AI and I do a lot of work with it, but something that I previously had working that was saying generate 5 unit tests for this particular feature so that we can build a test for them. I guess I spent 3 hours yesterday trying to get it to get off of 1. It will give me 1 test, but it won't give me 5. And it used to give me 5. And so, AI apparently is not perfect yet. I don't know. All right.
I've been definitely pulled down some bad paths with AI. It's not always right. Imagine that.
Well, thank you for spending some of your morning with us or wherever you are doing Low-Code Campfire. We will do it again next week. I hope you guys all have a great Labor Day if you get Labor Day off. And we will see you then. Thanks.
Thanks, Dale.